The death of Elisa Lam. Imagine watching security camera footage from a hotel elevator. A young woman enters alone. She presses multiple buttons, then stands in the corner. Normal enough. But then she starts behaving strangely. She presses buttons repeatedly. She steps in and out of the elevator, peeking around the corner as if hiding from someone. She waves her arms in bizarre gestures, as if having a conversation with someone who isn't there. She appears frightened, then confused, then agitated. The elevator doors keep opening and closing, but the elevator doesn't move. She steps back inside, presses herself against the wall, then exits again. The whole sequence lasts about 4 minutes and becomes increasingly unsettling to watch. Her movements are erratic, inexplicable. She seems to be responding to something or someone that the camera can't see. This footage was posted online and viewed millions of times. People tried to analyze every frame, every gesture, every expression. What was she doing? Who was she hiding from? What was she seeing that we can't? 19 days after that elevator footage was recorded, the young woman's body was found floating in a water tank on the roof of the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles. She was naked, her clothes and belongings floating beside her in the water. Hotel guests had been drinking, bathing in, and brushing their teeth with water from that tank for over 2 weeks. Her name was Elisa Lam. She was 21 years old, a student from Vancouver traveling alone in California. And her death at the Cecil Hotel, a place with a dark history of murders, suicides, and serial killers, has become one of the most discussed and debated mysterious deaths of the internet age. Was it murder? Suicide? An accident? A psychotic break? Something paranormal? The official ruling was accidental drowning, but that explanation satisfies almost no one who studied the case. Because the circumstances of Elisa Lam's death raise questions that don't have easy answers. This is the story of Elisa Lam and the Cecil Hotel. It's about a young woman struggling with mental illness, traveling alone in a city known for its dangers. It's about a hotel with a reputation for death and darkness. And it's about elevator footage that's been watched millions of times, analyzed frame by frame, but still hasn't yielded a definitive explanation for what we're seeing. Elisa Lam was born on April 30, 1991, in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. She was the daughter of immigrants from Hong Kong who ran a restaurant in Vancouver. Elisa grew up in a loving family environment, though she would later face challenges that would significantly impact her life. Elisa was intelligent, creative, and passionate about writing and photography. She maintained a blog called Ether Fields, where she wrote about her thoughts, her struggles, and her experiences. Her writing revealed a thoughtful, introspective person grappling with serious issues. Because Elisa struggled with bipolar disorder and depression. She'd been diagnosed while in university and had been prescribed medication to manage her condition. Her blog posts often discussed her mental health challenges with honesty and vulnerability. She wrote about the difficulty of managing her illness, about the side effects of medications, about the ups and downs of her moods. Despite her struggles, Elisa was determined to live her life fully. In January 2013, she decided to take a solo trip through California, visiting San Diego, Los Angeles, and Santa Cruz. She would travel by bus and stay in budget hotels and hostels, documenting her journey through photos and blog posts. Her family was supportive but concerned. Traveling alone while managing a serious mental illness wasn't without risks. But Elisa was 21, an adult capable of making her own decisions. She promised to stay in regular contact with her family and to be careful. Elisa's trip began in San Diego. Her posts from this period show her enjoying the experience, taking photos of the ocean and the city, writing about her adventures. She seemed to be having a good time, managing her condition, staying safe. On January 26, 2013, Elisa checked into the Cecil Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. The Cecil was a budget hotel, offering cheap rooms in a somewhat sketchy area of LA. It was located on Main Street in an area known for homelessness, drug activity, and crime. But it was affordable, and Elisa was traveling on a limited budget. What Elisa may not have known, or perhaps didn't fully appreciate, was the Cecil Hotel's dark history. The hotel had become infamous over its nearly century-long existence for the violence and death that occurred within its walls. In 1947, Elizabeth Short, known as the Black Dahlia, was seen at the Cecil shortly before her brutal murder. Serial killers Richard Ramirez and Jack Unterweger had both stayed at the Cecil while actively killing. Multiple guests had jumped to their deaths from the hotel's windows. Others had been murdered in their rooms. The hotel had a reputation, a darkness that seemed to cling to it. The Cecil had attempted to rebrand itself as Stay on Main to escape its reputation, but locals still called it the Cecil, and the building's history couldn't be erased with a name change. Eliza initially booked a shared hostel room at the hotel. Other guests who stayed in the room with her later reported that she was friendly but somewhat odd in her behavior. She would leave notes for her roommates about specific behaviors she wanted them to follow. She sometimes seemed distracted or disconnected. After a few days, hotel staff moved Eliza to a private room on the 5th floor. The reasons for this move aren't entirely clear, but it may have been due to complaints from her roommates about her unusual behavior, or possibly at Eliza's own request for more privacy. Eliza was scheduled to check out of the Cecil Hotel on January 31st and travel to Santa Cruz. She'd planned to meet up with friends there and continue her California adventure. She'd booked her hostel, arranged her transportation, and was looking forward to the next leg of her trip. But on January 31st, Eliza didn't check out. She didn't respond to messages from her family. She didn't show up at the Santa Cruz hostel where she had a reservation. By February 1st, when Eliza still couldn't be reached, her family in Vancouver was desperately worried. They contacted the Los Angeles Police Department to report Eliza missing. The LAPD sent officers to the Cecil Hotel to investigate. They searched Eliza's room on the 5th floor and found her belongings, her luggage, her personal items, her identification, all still in the room. Her phone was gone, and no one had seen her for days. The police expanded their search, checking the hotel's common areas, interviewing staff and guests, reviewing security camera footage. And that's when they found the elevator video, the footage that would become infamous, the 4 minutes of bizarre behavior that millions of people would watch and try to interpret. The elevator security footage from the Cecil Hotel, dated January 31st, 2013, is one of the most analyzed pieces of video in internet history. It's been slowed down, enhanced, scrutinized frame by frame, and subjected to countless theories and interpretations. Let's go through it chronologically, describing what we see. The video begins with Eliza entering the elevator alone. She's wearing a red hoodie, glasses, and appears calm. She enters, steps to the control panel, and presses multiple buttons. This could be normal behavior, pressing the button for her floor. But then she doesn't move to a corner or face forward as people typically do in elevators. Instead, she stands directly in the doorway as the doors begin to close. At the last second, she moves back slightly, but positions herself where she can see out when the doors open. The doors open. Eliza stands motionless, watching. She appears to be looking at something or waiting for something. The doors close. Then they open again without the elevator moving. This happens multiple times. The elevator seems to be malfunctioning, or perhaps someone outside is pressing a button. Eliza steps out of the elevator. She looks to her left, then to her right, craning her neck as if trying to see around the corner. Her body language suggests she's looking for something or someone. She steps back into the elevator, then immediately exits again. She moves to the side of the elevator, pressing herself against the wall where she wouldn't be visible to someone approaching. She's hiding. Clearly hiding. But from what or whom? She peeks her head around the corner again, looking down the hallway. Still seemingly checking for something. Then she steps fully out of the elevator and stands in the hallway. And this is where her behavior becomes truly bizarre. Eliza raises her hands and begins making strange gestures with her fingers. She's counting or signaling something with her hands, moving them in ways that don't correspond to any obvious communication. She raises her arms above her head, waves them around, brings them down, counts on her fingers. Her movements are fluid but strange, as if she's conducting an orchestra only she can hear or having a conversation using sign language with someone who isn't there. She turns to face the elevator, then away from it, continuing these hand gestures. This goes on for about 2 minutes. Throughout this sequence, Eliza appears agitated but also weirdly focused, as if what she's doing makes perfect sense to her even though it looks incomprehensible to viewers. Then she steps back into the elevator. She presses buttons on the panel again, pressing multiple buttons in what seems like a random pattern. She stands in the middle of the elevator, then moves to the corner. She appears to be waiting. The doors remain open. The elevator still isn't moving. Eliza finally steps out one more time, walks down the hallway out of the camera's view, and doesn't return. After she leaves, the elevator doors close and the elevator begins functioning normally again, as if Eliza's presence was what was causing the malfunction, though that makes no logical sense. The video ends. Total length, 4 minutes and slightly over 30 seconds. When police released this footage to the public on February 14, hoping someone might recognize Elisa or provide information about her whereabouts, they couldn't have anticipated the response. The video went viral. Millions of people watched it. Online communities formed dedicated to analyzing every frame. The theories about what the video showed ranged from the plausible to the outlandish. Some believed Elisa was hiding from someone threatening her, that her fear was real and justified, that someone was stalking her in the hotel. Others thought she was experiencing a psychotic episode, that her bipolar disorder or another mental health crisis was causing her to hallucinate or behave irrationally. Some focused on the hand gestures, suggesting she was communicating in sign language, or performing a ritual, or playing a game called Elevator Game that supposedly allows players to access another dimension. Paranormal enthusiasts suggested the Cecil Hotel was haunted, that Elisa was seeing ghosts or entities that the camera couldn't capture, that she was being tormented by supernatural forces. Conspiracy theorists noted similarities between Elisa's name and a tuberculosis test called Elisa, pointed out that there had been a tuberculosis outbreak in Skid Row near the hotel, and spun elaborate theories about biological warfare and government cover-ups. The video became a Rorschach test, with people seeing in it confirmation of whatever they already believed about mental illness, paranormal activity, or the dangers lurking in places like the Cecil Hotel. But while millions debated what the video meant, a more pressing question remained: where was Elisa Lam? For 19 days after Elisa Lam disappeared, guests at the Cecil Hotel had been complaining about the water. The pressure was low. The water looked dark or had a strange color. Most disturbing, some guests reported that the water had an odd taste and smell. The hotel maintenance staff investigated these complaints but initially couldn't find the source of the problem. They checked pipes, examined the building's plumbing, and tried to trace where the issues were originating. Finally, on February 19, 2013, maintenance worker Santiago Lopez climbed the fire escape to the hotel's roof to check the water tanks. The Cecil Hotel had 4 large water tanks on its roof, each holding thousands of gallons of water that supplied the building. What Lopez found on the roof would answer the question of where Elisa Lam had gone, but it would raise dozens of new questions about how she got there and what had happened to her. One of the water tanks had its hatch open. Lopez approached and looked inside. There, floating in the water, was a body. It was Elisa Lam. Lopez immediately notified management, who called the LAPT. The scene became a major investigation site. The Los Angeles Fire Department was called to drain the tank and recover Elisa's body. This process took several hours, and by the time it was complete, news crews had arrived, turning Elisa's death into a media spectacle. The circumstances of Elisa being in the water tank immediately raised troubling questions. The roof of the Cecil Hotel was supposedly locked and accessible only to hotel staff with keys. How did Elisa get to the roof? The water tanks were tall, cylindrical structures. To access the inside, you had to climb a ladder on the side of the tank, open a heavy hatch on top, and then descend into the tank. How did Elisa, a small woman, accomplish this? The hatch on the water tank was heavy and difficult to open. It would require significant strength to open it from outside, and it would be virtually impossible to close it from inside the tank. Yet the hatch had been open when Lopez found the tank. Had someone opened it and left it open? Or had Elisa somehow opened it herself? When Elisa's body was recovered from the tank, she was naked. Her clothes, red hoodie, jeans, underwear, were floating in the water near her body, along with her watch and room key. Why was she naked? Had she removed her clothes before entering the tank, or did they come off in the water? The condition of Elisa's body showed she had been in the water for an extended period. The medical examiner estimated she had died around the time she disappeared, meaning her body had been decomposing in the tank for those 19 days while guests drank, bathed in, and used water that had been in contact with her corpse. The hotel had to issue an apology and underwent extensive cleaning and water system flushing. Guests who'd been drinking the contaminated water were understandably horrified. Some reported feeling ill. The psychological impact of knowing they'd been consuming water that had contained a dead body was traumatic for many. The autopsy of Elisa Lam's body was conducted by the Los Angeles County coroner. The initial findings were inconclusive. There was no evidence of physical trauma, no stab wounds, gunshot wounds, or signs of assault. There were no defensive wounds suggesting a struggle. Toxicology tests showed she had her prescribed medications in her system, but also revealed the absence of certain medications, suggesting she may not have been taking all her prescribed drugs. The coroner's initial ruling was that the cause of death could not be determined. But after additional investigation and consultation, the final ruling came back: accidental drowning due to bipolar disorder. This ruling satisfied almost no one. The official explanation was that Eliza, in the midst of a mental health crisis, had somehow accessed the roof, climbed into the water tank, and accidentally drowned. The bizarre elevator footage was explained as evidence of her deteriorating mental state. But this explanation left numerous questions unanswered, questions that continue to fuel speculation and debate. The death of Eliza Lamb raises so many questions that even the official ruling of accidental drowning seems inadequate. Let's examine the major problems with the official narrative and the alternative theories that have emerged. How did she access the roof? The roof of the Cecil Hotel was supposedly locked and alarmed. Hotel staff claimed that accessing the roof required a key and that opening the door would trigger an alarm. Yet somehow Eliza got up there, and no alarm was reported going off. Some have suggested the door might not have been properly secured, that the alarm might not have been functioning, or that hotel staff weren't being entirely truthful about their security measures. The Cecil Hotel was a budget establishment with a questionable safety record. It's plausible their security wasn't as robust as claimed. Others have suggested Eliza may have accessed the roof through a fire escape or another route. Guests who'd stayed at the hotel reported that it was possible to access restricted areas if you knew how, that security was lax. But this still requires Eliza, in the midst of a mental health crisis, to have the presence of mind to find and navigate an alternate route to a locked roof. Is that plausible? How did she get into the water tank? This is perhaps the most troubling question. The water tanks on the Cecil's roof are not easy to access. You must, 1. Find the ladder attached to the side of the tank. 2. Climb this ladder approximately 10 to 15 feet. 3. Open a heavy hatch at the top. 4. Lower yourself through the hatch into the tank. Eliza Lamb was 5 feet 4 inches and weighed about 120 pounds. While not impossible for someone her size to do this, it would be challenging, especially in the dark, on a roof exposed to the elements. And if she was experiencing a psychotic episode, as the official ruling suggests, would she have the coordination and determination to complete this complex physical task? Some have suggested adrenaline during a mental health crisis could provide extra strength. Others argue this actually makes it less likely she could have completed such a task without injuring herself. Why was she naked? Eliza's clothes were found floating in the tank with her. The official explanation suggests she may have removed them herself, possibly due to paradoxical undressing, a phenomenon where hypothermia victims feel hot and remove their clothing. But the water in the tank, while not warm, wouldn't have been cold enough to cause rapid hypothermia, especially not immediately upon entering. And paradoxical undressing typically occurs in the final stages of hypothermia, not at the beginning. Others have suggested her clothes came off as she moved around in the water or during decomposition. But witnesses who saw the clothes in the tank said they appeared to have been removed normally, not torn or damaged. Could someone else have removed her clothes? This raises the possibility of foul play, but there was no evidence of sexual assault or struggle. What explains the elevator footage? The elevator video remains the most compelling and disturbing piece of evidence. The official explanation is that it shows Eliza in the midst of a psychotic episode, experiencing hallucinations or delusions. This is certainly possible. Bipolar disorder can include psychotic features. Eliza's hand gestures, her apparent fear, her checking around corners, all could be explained by her perceiving threats or presences that weren't real. But some aspects are harder to explain. Why was the elevator malfunctioning during her presence and then working normally after she left? Her hand gestures appear purposeful and deliberate, more like communicating than random movements. Her ability to press elevator buttons and navigate the hotel suggests some level of orientation to reality. Some have noted that the timestamp on the elevator video appears to have been altered or is incorrect, suggesting the video might have been edited or tampered with. Hotel security footage is not always reliable or complete. Mental illness or something else. The official ruling heavily emphasizes Eliza's bipolar disorder as the explanation for her behavior and death. And mental illness certainly could explain some aspects of what happened. But Eliza's family has stated that while she struggled with mental health, she'd never shown signs of being suicidal or self-destructive. She'd been managing her condition for years. She'd successfully completed the earlier parts of her trip. What changed at the Cecil Hotel? Was it simply that she stopped taking her medications properly? Was it the stress of solo travel? Was it something specific about the environment of the Cecil Hotel, its darkness, its danger, its history, that triggered a crisis? Was foul play involved? Despite the official ruling, many believe Eliza Lamb was murdered. They point to the suspicious circumstances, the difficulty of accessing the roof and water tank alone, the lack of obvious explanation for her being naked, reports of suspicious individuals at the hotel around the time she disappeared, the Cecil Hotel's history of violence and danger, but there's no physical evidence of murder. No defensive wounds. No signs of assault. No suspects. No witnesses. No clear motive. If someone killed Eliza, they did so without leaving any forensic evidence, then managed to transport her body to the roof, put her in the water tank, and leave without being seen or detected. This seems unlikely but not impossible. The paranormal theory, given the Cecil Hotel's reputation and the bizarre nature of the elevator footage, some have suggested paranormal involvement. They argue Eliza was seeing ghosts or entities, that she was being tormented by spirits in the hotel, that supernatural forces led to her death. This theory is unprovable and unfalsifiable. Those who believe in it interpret the evidence through that lens. Skeptics dismiss it as fantasy. But the paranormal theory persists because the Cecil Hotel's history lends itself to such interpretations. The death of Eliza Lamb occurred over a decade ago, but it continues to fascinate and disturb people around the world. The case has been featured in documentaries, examined in countless YouTube videos and podcasts, and discussed endlessly on internet forums. In 2021, Netflix released a 4-part documentary series called Crime Scene: The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel, which brought renewed attention to the case. The series explored Eliza's life, the hotel's history, the investigation, and the various theories about what happened. The documentary was criticized by some, including Eliza's family, for sensationalizing her death and focusing too heavily on conspiracy theories rather than treating Eliza as a person who died tragically. The family felt the documentary invaded Eliza's privacy and turned her mental illness into entertainment. This criticism highlights an uncomfortable aspect of how we consume true crime content. Eliza Lamb was a real person, a young woman with family who loved her, with struggles she was trying to overcome, with dreams and aspirations. She's not just a mystery to be solved or a spooky story to tell. The Cecil Hotel, unable to escape its dark reputation even with the rebranding attempt, eventually closed to the public. It's been converted to low-income housing, though its history continues to attract attention from dark tourists and curiosity seekers. What really happened to Eliza Lamb? The official answer is accidental drowning due to bipolar disorder. But this answer doesn't satisfy many people because it doesn't explain all the circumstances, doesn't account for all the questions. Perhaps Eliza did experience a severe mental health crisis that led her to the roof and into the water tank. Perhaps her behavior in the elevator was psychosis, and her death was a tragedy resulting from untreated or undertreated mental illness. Perhaps there are aspects of the case we don't know about, details that weren't made public, evidence that would make the official ruling make more sense if we had access to it. Or perhaps there are questions that simply don't have answers, circumstances that are genuinely ambiguous, a death that can't be fully explained no matter how much we analyze the evidence. Eliza Lamb's case reminds us of the limits of our ability to know what happened in the past. We have footage of her final known movements, we have the location and circumstances of her death, we have autopsy reports and witness statements. But we don't have certainty. We don't have a narrative that fully explains everything. And perhaps that's what makes this case so compelling. It exists in that uncomfortable space between explanation and mystery, between the known and the unknown. The elevator footage shows us something, but what exactly it's showing remains open to interpretation. For Eliza's family, the mystery is a burden. They've lost a daughter, and the circumstances of her death have become public entertainment, endlessly discussed and debated by strangers who never knew her. For those of us who encounter her story, it's a reminder to be thoughtful about how we engage with true crime, to remember that these are real people, real tragedies, not just puzzles to solve or stories to consume. Eliza Lamb was 21 years old when she died. She had her whole life ahead of her. She was trying to manage a challenging mental illness while pursuing her dreams, traveling, seeing the world. And she died alone, in a water tank on a hotel roof, in circumstances that remain unclear and troubling. Whatever happened in those final moments, whatever led her to that roof and into that tank, Eliza deserved better. She deserved to complete her trip, to write more blog posts, to take more photographs, to live her life. The elevator footage will continue to be watched and analyzed. The theories will continue to be debated. The mystery will persist. But perhaps what we should remember most is not the mystery but the person, Eliza Lamb, a young woman who struggled and dreamed and died too soon, whose death at the Cecil Hotel became one of the internet age's most haunting questions.